I stood there in my $4,000 suit, holding his favorite pastry. I came to celebrate his launch. Instead, I found federal agents taping the doors I helped pick. They said I was the target, that my husband had vanished, and that every signature on the fraudulent transactions was mine. They said he built the perfect plan. They don't know. So did I. And mine is the one that will work. My name is Alara Vance. I am 42 years old, and until approximately 10 minutes ago, I was the chief financial officer of Quantum Dynamics. The Tuesday morning air was sharp, that specific Chicago chill that cuts through cashmere. I stepped out of the black car service onto the familiar granite sidewalk of our Loop headquarters. The wind off the river was relentless, but I barely noticed. In my left hand, I held my own coffee, a large black latte. In my right, a small white paper bag, still warm from the bakery, one almond croissant, extra toasted, Julian's, my husband's, precise order. He was Julian Vance, 45 years old, the impossibly charismatic founder and chief executive officer of the company I had spent my life building. I was not there for a social call. I was there for the numbers. This afternoon was the culmination of 6 straight months of my life. 6 months of 18-hour days, of battling underwriters, of restructuring debt, of modeling financial projections until the lines on the spreadsheet blurred into a meaningless haze. Our new product launch was scheduled for 2 p.m. It was the event I had secured, the future I had financed. I was arriving early to do one last obsessive review of the data before we presented our miracle to the world. I expected the lobby. I expected the sound of heels on the Italian marble floor, the low murmur of analysts by the espresso bar, the scent of industrial cleaner and success. Instead, I was met with silence, a heavy, absolute quiet that felt fundamentally wrong. I reached the massive glass revolving doors. They were still. I pushed. The door didn't budge. I frowned, shifting the coffee in the pastry bag, and pushed again with my shoulder. Locked. We were never locked. Not at 8:30 on a Tuesday morning. That's when I saw it. It wasn't a professional sign. It was a single, stark white sheet of paper. Standard A3, maybe. It was taped to the inside of the glass, the one I had picked out, with 4 strips of thick, ugly, brown packing tape. It looked amateur. It looked desperate. But the seal at the bottom was not amateur. It was the official eagle of the United States District Court. Above it, typed in a severe, all-caps, bureaucratic font, were the words that stopped my heart. Building permanently closed. All assets seized by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. I read the words once, then a second time. My mind, a machine trained to analyze complex derivatives and multi-billion-dollar balance sheets, could not parse this. SEC. Seized. I am the CFO. A seizure would mean it was impossible. I would have known. I would have seen the irregularities. I designed the systems to prevent this. The paper bag in my hand suddenly felt heavy. Ridiculous. The croissant I had made the baker retoast was likely crushed, as if summoned by the terrible quiet. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. A single sharp buzz. I pulled it out, my fingers feeling numb. It was not a name I recognized, just a string of numbers from an unidentifiable source. One text message. I'm sorry. Time to start over. Don't try to find me. My blood went cold. I looked up from the phone, back at the sign. The world tilted. The words on the sign and the words on my phone began to merge. A van, white and unmarked, screeched to a halt at the curb. Doors slid open. Men and women with long lens cameras and microphones spilled out, running toward me. They knew who I was. The flashes started, white and blinding, reflecting off the glass, illuminating the terrible sign, catching me in my $4,000 suit, holding a pastry for a man who had just evaporated. Mrs. Vance, Mrs. Vance. Did you know? Is it true? Alara, how much is gone? I was a statue. the center of a storm I didn't even know was gathering. Then, a black sedan pulled up, quiet and official. It parted the sea of journalists. A man got out of the passenger side. He walked directly to me, his presence creating a small, unwelcome bubble of authority in the chaos. Mrs. Vance. His voice was flat. Special Agent Krenner, FBI. I looked at him. My mind, which had stalled, suddenly clicked back on. It was analyzing. The suit. It was cheap. Polyester blend. Maybe wool, but badly tailored. The shoulders were too tight, the fabric pulling across his back. He was a functionary. He was not the one in charge. "We need you to come with us." It was not a request. He gestured toward the open door of the sedan. The cameras flashed, capturing the moment. The CFO, the wife, being led away. I didn't say a word. I let the warm pastry bag drop to the sidewalk. And I walked. They didn't put me in handcuffs. It was a courtesy meant to be a threat. It meant they thought I was smart enough not to run, or stupid enough to think I was still in charge. I was in a room at the FBI field office. The room was aggressively white. The walls were white. The table was a white laminate, and the light from the fluorescent panels overhead was a flat, sterile white that sucked all the color out of the world. Even the air smelled processed. Agent Krenner, the man with the ill-fitting suit, sat in the corner, taking up space. He was the muscle, the transportation. The person in charge sat directly across from me. Her name was Maya Reed. She introduced herself as a senior enforcement agent with the SEC. She was around my age, maybe 40, with black hair pulled into a severe, perfect knot. Her suit was a dark navy, impeccably tailored, and it probably cost more than Krenner's last 3. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and they never, ever left my face. "We appreciate your cooperation, Mrs. Vance," Maya Reed began, her voice as smooth and cold as the tabletop. Krenner shuffled, but Reed's posture was granite. "I am not cooperating," I said, my voice hoarse. "I was brought here." A thin, cold smile touched Reed's lips. "Right, let's get to it then." She opened a thick binder. "We have a problem, a very large problem." She slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a summary, a list of shell corporations, Delaware, Cayman Islands. Over the last 18 months, a significant amount of capital has been diverted from quantum dynamics. We're currently tracking $1.2 billion. My mind reeled. $1.2 billion. It was an impossible number. "That's not possible," I said. "I review all major outflows, all capital accounts. A transfer of that magnitude would require my personal authorization. It would have triggered every—" "It did," Reed interrupted. She slid a second stack of papers toward me. They were printouts of wire transfers, dozens of them, amounts ranging from $10 million to $50 million. "As you can see," Reed continued, "they all have your authorization." I stared at the page. She was right. At the bottom of each transfer request, under the routing numbers for banks I had never heard of, was my signature, my full, encrypted electronic signature, the one I had designed myself, the one I believed was infallible. Alara M. Vance. Alara M. Vance. Alara M. Vance. "These are forgeries," I said. My heart was a cold stone in my chest. "Forgeries," Reed repeated, tilting her head. "That's interesting. We brought in a forensic team. They say the encryption is perfect, unbroken. The only way to authorize these, they tell us, is with your private key." "Then their analysis is wrong," I snapped, the CFO in me taking over. "I am telling you, I did not authorize these. I designed that system. I built the firewalls. It cannot be breached." Maya Reed leaned forward, the cold smile returning. "That's what the systems designer would say when they're caught, wouldn't they, Mrs. Vance? That it's unbreachable, except, of course, by the one person who holds all the keys, the one person who knew exactly how to create a blind spot, the one person who stood to gain the most. The air left my lungs. The accusation was so perfect, so complete. I was being fitted for a cage I hadn't even seen. "I want my lawyer," I said. I pulled out my phone. Maya Reed watched me. I went to my favorites and pressed the name David Stone, our corporate counsel. Before I could even hit the call button, Reed spoke. "I wouldn't bother. Mrs. Vance." I looked up. "Mr. Stone is not your lawyer," she said, her voice cutting. "He is Quantum's lawyer, and as of this morning, Quantum is a crime scene. You are the primary subject in our investigation into its collapse." I put the phone down on the white table. Subject. Not officer. Not CFO. Not wife. Subject. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Where is Julian?" Agent Krenner, who I had forgotten was even in the room, cleared his throat. Maya Reed looked at him, an impatient glance, and then back at me. She shuffled her papers. "Mr. Vance has been cooperating with our investigation," she said. The words delivered with the precision of an execution. The white walls of the room seemed to move, to tighten around me. "Cooperating. What do you mean?" "He contacted us several weeks ago," Reed said. "He provided us with the initial evidence. He claimed he had just discovered a pattern of financial misconduct. He claimed he was heartbroken. He said he was terrified of what his wife, the CFO, was doing." I stopped breathing. This was not happening. This was a nightmare. Julian, crying to them, heartbroken. "He told us you acted alone," Reed said, closing the binder. The sound was a definitive, final snap. "Driven by greed. He said he couldn't bear to be there when it all came down. He gave us everything, and then he disappeared. They let me go. For now," Krenner said, handing me a receipt. "What is this?" "Your passport," he said. "We're holding it. You are not to leave the city." I walked out of the federal building. The 2 p.m. press conference I was supposed to be leading was just starting. I stood on the street in my expensive suit, the Chicago wind whipping my hair across my face. The world hadn't just tilted. It had been inverted. I wasn't just betrayed. I had been erased, replaced by a story of a greedy woman and a heartbroken man, a perfect, meticulous frame. The doorman at the Lincoln Park Tower refused to meet my eyes when I entered. He knew. By now, the whole city knew. The elevator ride, a smooth 30-second ascent to the penthouse, felt agonizingly slow, the silence of the mirrored car oppressive. I stepped out into the foyer. The apartment was still. It was not the comfortable quiet of a home. It was the absolute, sterile silence of a tomb. The air was cold, the automated systems still running, but the life had been vacuumed out of it. My heels clicked on the marble floor, the sound sharp and offensive in the quiet. I walked past the living room, past the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that now seemed alien to me. I went straight to our master suite. The bed was made, perfectly. I continued, pushing open the door to our shared walk-in closet. My side was as I had left it. The gray and blue suits, the silk blouses, the heels arranged in their neat rows. His side was a void. It was not the work of a man in a hurry. It was not the frantic, angry mess of someone fleeing. This was a methodical, careful, curated departure. Every single bespoke suit was gone. The rows of handmade shirts, gone. The drawers that held his sweaters, empty. His collection of watches, the Patek, the 2 Rolexes, the one I had bought him for our 5th anniversary, all gone. The entire velvet-lined tray where he kept his cufflinks was empty. His shoes, every last pair, from his running sneakers to his $2,000 Italian loafers, had vanished. He had been planning this for months. He had been packing, piece by piece, while I was working 18-hour days to secure the future of the company he was gutting. He had kissed me this morning, told me I was working too hard, and handed me my coffee. The betrayal was so profound, so meticulous, it was almost brilliant. I walked out of the closet and into his study. His massive mahogany desk was clear, wiped clean of any personality, wiped clean of prints, I assumed. But he had left one thing. It was placed dead center on the leather blotter. A small, dark blue velvet box. I knew it instantly. I opened it. Inside, resting on the faded silk lining, was the platinum tie clip I had given him for our 10th anniversary. It was simple, elegant, and engraved with the coordinates of the small restaurant in Paris where we had our first real date. He had not just forgotten it. He had left it. It was a message, far crueler than the text he had sent. It was his way of saying that everything, even that memory, was now junk. What is old is disposable. I closed the box. The shock that had frozen me at the office, the numbness I felt in the white room, was beginning to recede. It was being replaced by something else. A cold, hard clarity. I walked to the wall opposite his desk, to the large abstract oil painting we had bought in Santa Fe. I pushed the frame to the side. Behind it, set into the wall, was my personal safe. And for the first time today, I felt a grim smile touch my lips. The drywall around the safe's keypad was savaged. There were deep, angry drill marks in the hardened steel plate. He had tried to break into it. He had tried to use brute force to get at my things, just as he had used brute force to try and destroy my life. The arrogance of it. He, who knew nothing of encryption or engineering, thought he could drill through a half-inch of reinforced steel. He didn't know the code. He had never, in 15 years, even thought to ask what I kept in it. He just assumed he could take it. My fingers, steady and sure, moved across the keypad. The code was not an anniversary. It was not his birthday. It was the date I had, as a student, first proven a complex financial theorem my professor said was impossible. A heavy thunk echoed in the silent room, and the steel door clicked open. He had probably expected jewelry, or bearer bonds, or cash. He didn't understand me at all. Inside, there was only one item, a small, black, external hard drive. My insurance policy. It had started 5 years ago, a small discrepancy. An investment Julian managed personally. It was only $50,000, a rounding error for us. But he had lied about it. A casual, easy lie about market fluctuations. I ran my own analysis. It was not a fluctuation. It was a withdrawal. The lie unsettled me. I was a woman who hated unquantified risk. So, I built a ghost. Using my access as CFO, I created a shadow ledger, a private, encrypted, offline mirror server. For 5 years, it had been silently logging and backing up every single transaction, every internal email, every memo, every revision to every file, and every system log within the quantum dynamics network. And, because his lie had made me distrustful, I had included a keystroke logger tied to his specific CEO workstation. I had never looked at it, not once. I had told myself it was just the obsessive precaution of a good CFO. Tonight, it felt like the work of a genius. I took the drive from the safe, ignoring the mess of plaster and metal shavings he had left on the floor. I walked to my own study, locked the heavy oak door, and sat at my desk. I plugged the drive into my personal laptop. The screen lit up. I entered my encryption key. It was time to see exactly how my husband had built his house of cards, and more importantly, how I was going to be the one to burn it down. I didn't call a criminal defense attorney. You call one of them when you're desperate, when you're trying to plead down a sentence or make a deal. I was not desperate. I was angry. I was a financier, and I understood one thing: you do not hire a general practitioner to handle a hostile takeover. You hire a shark. In Chicago, there was only one shark, Marcus Cole. He had been the former chief of economic crimes for the U.S. Attorney's Office. He had spent 10 years putting men like Julian in prison. Now, he spent his time in private practice, charging what I heard was $5,000 an hour. defending corporations against the very government he used to work for. He was known, simply, as the most expensive and ruthless lawyer in the city. I called his private number at 250 a ma'am. He answered on the second ring. "This is Alara Vance." A pause. "You have 60 seconds. His voice was smooth. "Awake. The SEC seized Quantum Dynamics this morning. The FBI has my passport. I am the primary subject in a $1.2 billion fraud investigation. My husband, Julian Vance, has disappeared after framing me, with the help of the lead SEC agent. I have the drive that proves it. I need you." Another pause, shorter this time. "My office. In 30 minutes. He hung up. At 3:30 a.m., I walked into his office. It was on the top floor of the Aeon Center, a cavern of dark wood, glass, and steel that looked out over the entire city. Marcus Cole was standing by the window, not looking at the view, but at me. He was in a perfect midnight blue suit, a crisp white shirt, and a tie. He looked like he had been waiting for me all day. "Mrs. Vance," he said, gesturing not to a chair but to his massive, empty conference table. "The clock is running. Show me." I didn't sit. I placed 2 items on the polished wood. First, the printed sheet of paper from the FBI, the one naming me as their target. Second, the small, black, encrypted hard drive. "I am not hiring you to defend me, Mr. Cole," I said, my voice as cold and clear as the glass around us. "I am hiring you to hunt. I am hiring you to take the man who framed me and the federal agent who helped him and turn them into your assets. I want them destroyed." Marcus looked at the drive, then at me. There was no sympathy in his eyes, only a flicker of professional, predatory interest. He didn't care about my pain, my marriage, or my innocence. He only cared about the data. He was perfect. "My retainer," he said, "is $2 million. It will be in your account by morning," I replied. He nodded once. He picked up the drive, walked to an adjoining room, and plugged it into a dedicated air-gapped laptop that looked more like military equipment than a computer. I followed him. "This is 5 years of Quantum's complete digital footprint," I explained, pulling up a chair. "Every email, every transaction log, every byte of data, mirrored in real time. They claim your signature is on the wires," he said, his fingers flying across the keyboard, pulling up the file structure. "It is," I said, "and it isn't." For the next 2 hours, we worked. It was not a conversation. It was a high-level data analysis. I showed him the system I had built. Then I showed him the shadow. "He's not a hacker," I said, "so he wouldn't try to break my encryption. He would just build a cage around it." I showed Marcus the logs from Julian's own terminal. Starting 18 months ago, he had used his CEO-level admin access to create a ghost system. It was a sophisticated digital puppeteer. It didn't steal my signature. It created a separate, secure channel. He would approve a legitimate $10,000 vendor payment. Then, this ghost system would intercept the request after my encryption was applied, clone the authenticated packet, swap the routing and account numbers for his offshore ones, change the amount, and send it on its way. To the bank. It looked like a valid, verified order from the CFO. To my own internal audit, it looked like a simple vendor payment. Julian hadn't broken in. He had built a secret door using the very keys I had given him. "He's clever," Marcus noted, his voice flat. "But this only proves the how. It doesn't stop them from saying you two were in it together. We need the why. We need the who." "We have it," I said. He was arrogant. He used the internal communication system. I directed Marcus to a different partition, the keystroke logger, the emails, the chat logs. Julian wasn't just working with a hacker in some far-off country. He was working with someone inside. The name, when it appeared, made my blood run cold for the second time that day. It was not a hacker. It was Agent Maya Reed. We clicked on a chat log from 3 months prior. It was not a professional conversation. "Julian, this is getting tight. She's asking questions about the quarterly projections. Maya, handle her. Keep her distracted. I'm handling the commission. Julian, are you sure this is going to work? It's all on her. Maya, it's perfect. The greedy female CFO. It's a story they already love to believe. When she's indicted, I'll be the one leading the investigation. I'll get my promotion, and you'll get me. They were lovers. My vision narrowed. This was not just a frame-up. It was a conspiracy. A plot for them to steal $1.2 billion, pin it on me, and then have Maya herself lead the investigation to ensure no one ever looked at Julian. Check her shell corporations, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He wouldn't move the money himself. He would give it to her. Marcus was already ahead of me. His fingers moved, tracing the IP addresses from their chats, cross-referencing them with the offshore bank accounts. He found it in less than 5 minutes. A shell company in Maya Reed's name, registered in Delaware, which owned another shell company in the Caymans, and in that Cayman account, we found the money trail, transactions for a $5 million villa in Greece, a deposit on a 75-foot yacht, all of it under her control. He had stolen the money, but he had given it all to her. Marcus Cole leaned back in his chair. The sun was just beginning to cast a sick, gray light over the city. He looked at the screen, then at me. He smiled. It was a terrible thing to see. Well, Mrs. Vance, he said, closing the laptop. This isn't a legal defense. This is a coup d'etat. Marcus Cole looked at me over the rim of his coffee cup. The sun was now a weak, watery gray over the lake, and we had been working for nearly 3 hours. Our next call is to the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. We go over the local FBI's head. We present the evidence of Reed's conspiracy, and we offer you up as a cooperating witness. He said, It's the only move. No, I said. Marcus paused, cup halfway to his mouth. No, not yet. I stood up, my legs aching from sitting, my entire body thrumming with a cold, controlled energy. There's one more call I have to make. I'm not going to D.C. as a witness. I'm going as the CFO of Quantum, with the backing of my board. Marcus sighed. It was a long, patient, expensive sound. Ilara, they are not your board, not anymore. They are a group of terrified old men who just watched $1.2 billion vanish. You are the liability. They will cut you loose before you finish saying hello. You don't know Robert Peterson, I said, already dialing. He's been my mentor for 20 years. He's the chairman. He's like a father to me. He brought me into this company. He will listen to me. Fathers are complicated, Marcus said quietly. But it's your money. Go ahead. Against his explicit $5,000 an hour advice, I initiated an emergency Zoom call with Robert Peterson. At 6:15 in the morning, his face appeared on my screen. He was 70 years old, and in the harsh light of his home office, he looked every day of it. His silver hair was thin, his face a roadmap of weary lines. He was not in a suit. He was in a cashmere robe. Ilara, he said. His voice was not warm. It was gravel. This is a catastrophe. I've been on the phone all night with the other directors. Robert, thank God I reached you, I said, forcing the CFO's precision into my voice. I would not be emotional. I would be factual. You are in danger. The company is... Julian has framed me. I am sending a secure file to your private email right now. It contains irrefutable proof. I spoke quickly, laying it all out. Julian has been stealing from the company for 18 months. He did it by creating a ghost system to clone my signature. He didn't work alone. He was conspiring with the lead SEC agent, a woman named Maya Reed. They are lovers. Robert. The file I'm sending has their private chat logs and the offshore accounts in her name. This is a federal conspiracy. I am the victim they chose to pin it on. I watched him. I watched for the shock, the outrage, the call to arms. He just stared at me. His tired eyes held an expression I couldn't, or wouldn't, place. He didn't look at his email. He didn't open the file. He called me, Ilara, Peterson said, his voice quiet. The words hung in the air. Who? Julian. He called me last week, from a blocked number. Peterson looked down, as if gathering himself. He was crying. The man was completely broken. I've never heard him like that. The performance. The charismatic, brilliant performance. I could see it. See Julian pacing, fabricating his tears, his voice choked with just the right amount of betrayal. Robert, that was a lie. He told me he had found something. Peterson cut me off, his voice hardening. He told me he had discovered financial irregularities. Your irregularities. He said he confronted you, and that you were behind it all. Peterson looked up, his gaze now cold and accusatory. He said he was so ashamed, so utterly destroyed by your deception, that he couldn't face the company. He couldn't face me. He said he had to run. He had to get away before the whole thing collapsed on his head. He was terrified of you. The narrative was so perfect, so simple. The brilliant, emotional, heartbroken founder, the cold, calculating, greedy CFO. Robert, that is insane, I said, my voice shaking now, the precision gone. Look at the file. Look at the data. The numbers don't lie. I don't need to look at your data, he snapped. The word was an insult. What do you think that proof looks like to us? Ilara, to the board. It looks like a scorned wife. Found out, desperately trying to drag her husband down with her. It's pathetic. Pathetic. The room spun. The man who had toasted my promotion, who had danced with me at my wedding, who I had helped make a billionaire, called me pathetic. The board held an emergency vote, Peterson said, his voice now devoid of all emotion. He was reading from a script. It was at 4 a.m. We reviewed the preliminary statement from the SEC. We reviewed the evidence provided by Mr. Vance, which Agent Reed was kind enough to forward. Of course she was. She had already neutralized my family. Effective immediately. The board is invoking the morals clause in your employment contract. You are terminated as Chief Financial Officer of Quantum Dynamics. I couldn't speak. I just watched his mouth move. Furthermore, all unvested stock and options are hereby canceled. Our legal team will be filing a suit to initiate clawback procedures for all bonuses paid to you in the last 24 months. The company must show it is acting decisively. He wasn't just firing me, he was stripping me bare. He was taking my work, my name, and every dollar I had ever earned from this company. He was leaving me in this penthouse with nothing but a federal indictment. They chose him. They chose the easy story. They chose the charismatic man over the complex woman. This betrayal, this severing, was worse than Julian's. Julian was my enemy. Robert Peterson was my father. He had just watched a stranger hand him a gun, and he had pointed it at me and pulled the trigger without a second thought. Ilara, he asked, as if my silence was an inconvenience. I clicked the red end meeting button. I cut him off. The silence in the office was absolute. I turned to look at Marcus Cole. He had been standing in the corner, watching the entire thing. He hadn't said a word. He just picked up his coffee cup and took a slow sip. He looked at me. His dark eyes were unreadable. "Are you ready now?" he asked. I looked at the window, at the gray city that was about to devour me. The woman who had made that phone call, the one who believed in loyalty and mentors, was gone. She had died in the last 5 minutes. All that was left was the cold. I turned back to Marcus. Yes, burn them all. My reputation was a house that Julian and Maya had built. It was a structure made of lies, but it was solid, complete with a narrative foundation and a greedy woman facade. My old life, my career, my family at the board that was another house, and it was already in ashes, burned down by Robert Peterson's betrayal. To survive, I couldn't just defend the false house they built for me. I had to demolish it, tear it down to the studs and expose the rot in its foundation. But more importantly, I had to demolish Julian's house the safe, comfortable, invisible structure he had built for his new life. And to do that, as Marcus explained in the stark, early morning light of his office, you don't complain to the local fire department. You go straight to the engineers. Marcus did not call the FBI in Chicago. He did not call the U.S. Attorney's local office. He called his old mentor, a man who now held one of the most feared and anonymous jobs in government, the Inspector General for the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. He made the call on a secure line, and the conversation was brief. "I have a client," Marcus said. "She is the target of a $1.2 billion fraud in Chicago. She's also the victim, and she has hard proof that the lead SEC agent is the primary conspirator. We have a 2-hour window, or this evidence goes public." There was a pause. "Reagan National, 9 p.m. A car will meet you," the voice on the other end said, and hung up. We flew out of O'Hare on a commercial red-eye, booked under my assistant's name. We sat in first class, a defendant and her shark, and neither of us said a word. I was no longer a person. I was a whistleblower. I was a weapon. A black government SUV met us at the arrivals curb. No lights, just a silent, imposing presence. We were driven not to a field office, but to the main justice building. We were led through underground corridors, through security checkpoints that required thumbprints and facial scans, until we arrived at a door that looked like it belonged on a bank vault, a SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. No phones, no laptops, no windows, just a polished table, 4 chairs, and 3 grim-faced people who would never, ever appear in a newspaper. 2 men and a woman from the DOJ's Public Integrity Section. The Inspector General himself was not present. These were his surgeons. "You have our attention, Mrs. Vance," the woman said. She did not introduce herself. I was not Alara, the betrayed wife. I was not Alara, the terminated employee. I was Alara Vance, the chief financial officer. I opened the encrypted laptop Marcus had provided, one they had already cleared, and I began my presentation. "Good evening," I said, my voice as calm as if I were presenting a quarterly report. "You have a significant problem within the Securities and Exchange Commission, your lead agent in the quantum dynamics case. Maya Reed is a co-conspirator in the fraud, not its investigator." For the next hour, I gave them a masterclass in my own destruction. I didn't speak of betrayal. I spoke of data. I showed them the server logs. I showed them the architecture of Julian's ghost system. I showed them the exact, obscure loophole in the SEC's own automated monitoring protocols that Maya would have known about, a loophole that allowed certain encrypted packets under $50 million to pass without a secondary human review. Julian provided the how, I explained, but Maya provided the path. She told him exactly how to structure the transfers to avoid the triggers she herself was supposed to be monitoring. They were impressed, but not convinced. This was a complex story, and they were, by nature, cynical. "This is compelling," the lead man said. "But it's his word against hers. He's gone. She's a decorated agent. You're the one holding the bag. It's neat." "I agree," I said, "which is why I brought this." I clicked on a final file, an audio file. "What is that?" "Julian is arrogant," I said, "but he's also a coward. He needed reassurance. I always knew that about him. 5 years ago, after he lied to me about that small investment, I set up a private, anonymous risk management service, a digital fixer, supposedly based in the Caymans. I told him it was my in case of emergency contact. Of course, the fixer was just a secure AI-modulated voice inbox that routed directly to a server on my hard drive. I let that sink in. Julian, believing he was talking to a high-priced Cayman operative, used it. He wanted to brag. He wanted to confess his genius. I hit play. The room was silent, and then Julian's voice filled the skiff. It was clear, jubilant, and utterly damning. "It's perfect." The old men on the board, Peterson, they ate it up. Crying on the phone to him was a masterstroke, if I do say so myself. His voice laughed. "And Ilara. My God, my brilliant, bookworm idiot of a wife. She's so focused on the numbers she never saw the picture. She's sitting in Chicago right now, terminated, broke, about to be indicted. And Maya gets the credit. She'll get a promotion for making the case against the biggest corrupt female CFO in years. It's poetry. She gets me. She gets the money. And she gets a new title. The lead prosecutor just closed her eyes. The other man looked like he was going to be physically ill. They didn't just have securities fraud. They didn't just have a rogue agent. They had a high-level federal corruption scandal that could shatter the SEC's Chicago office. The woman opened her eyes. She looked at me. "Mrs. Vance, we are now going to have a conversation about a deal. In exchange for your full and secret cooperation in an active sting operation, the Department of Justice will offer you full transactional and testimonial immunity for any and all crimes related to this case." She leaned forward. "They built a house of lies to put you in. We're going to ask you to live in it for just a little while longer." I flew back to Chicago, but not to my penthouse. The DOJ put me up in a featureless hotel room at the Marriott. I was no longer a free citizen. I was a federal asset. The first thing they did was fit me for a wire. It was a delicate, adhesive device, thin as a piece of tape, resting just below my collarbone. It felt like a parasite. "You have to live your life," the D.C. prosecutor had told me. "You have to be the woman they think you are, the one who just lost everything, the one who is broken. Broken." It was a role I had to learn to play. The first performance was scheduled for the next day. I knew Robert Peterson's routine. Every Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. He was at the clubhouse of our exclusive golf club. He wouldn't play. He would just drink coffee, read the Wall Street Journal, and hold court. I walked in at 8:45. I was not wearing a suit. I was wearing gray sweatpants, one of Julian's old university sweatshirts, and no makeup. My hair was pulled back in a messy knot. I looked like a ghost. He was at his usual table. When he saw me, his face hardened. He was about to call security. I stumbled, my hand landing on his table to catch myself. The wire under my sweatshirt was live. "Robert," I said. My voice was a dry croak. I had practiced it. I had drunk salt water to make it raw. "Please, don't!" He looked at me with open disgust. "Ilara, this is not the place." "I have no place." The words came out, a little too loud, and I let a tear, a real one I had been summoning for an hour, roll down my cheek. "They took everything. The board. My home." He looked around, embarrassed by the scene. "Lower your voice." "They are going to indict me," I whispered, leaning in. This was the script. "Robert, you were my father. You were. I know I messed up. I must have missed something." His eyes changed. The disgust was replaced by something worse. Pity. Arrogant, condescending pity. "I will do anything," I said, my voice breaking. "Anything. I'll sign anything. I'll say I was negligent. I'll take the fall for the oversight, but I cannot go to prison. Robert, please. You have to help me." He looked at me for a long time. He saw the broken woman Julian had described. He saw the pathetic creature he had cast aside. He believed in my weakness. "If you are willing to sign a full admission of gross negligence," he said slowly, "acknowledging you failed in your fiduciary duty, I might be able to convince the board to present it as a mitigating factor, as a show of your remorse." He was trying to get a signed confession to cover the board's own liability. "Yes," I whispered. "Thank you, Robert. Thank you." I ran out of the club, a desperate, broken woman. In the car, I unbuttoned my shirt, and the FBI agent in the passenger seat, a woman who looked like she was barely 25, carefully detached the wire. "That was convincing," she said. "He's a fool," I replied. That was part 1 of the lure. Part 2 was Marcus's job. While I was playing the victim, Marcus was playing the gossip. He had lunch with a rival attorney, a man he despised but often shared information with. He knew this man was the U.S. contact for the high-priced offshore firm now representing Julian's interests. Over a $1,200 lunch, Marcus was a picture of defeat. He let slip that his new client, Alara Vance, was a total wreck. "She's a mess," Marcus sighed, swirling his wine. "Completely shattered. Suicidal, honestly. I'm more of a therapist than a lawyer at this point. And the Fed's case. Honestly, it's garbage." The other lawyer's eyes lit up. "Garbage. All circumstantial." Marcus lied. "They have no hard evidence tying her directly. It's all just, she was the CFO. She must have known. The Chicago office is in a panic. They're trying to pin it on her, but they're failing. The seed was planted. The lure was now in the water. We gave it 48 hours. The misinformation would travel from that lawyer to the offshore firm, and finally, to Julian. It was a perfect piece of bait, designed for one man. To Julian, it would mean 3 things. First, that I was emotionally destroyed and no longer a threat. Second, that the federal case was weak and the Chicago agents were incompetent. Third, that he was safe. His arrogance, the one I had counted on, would do the rest. He wouldn't be able to stay away. His narrative, the heartbroken husband, was incomplete without a final act. He would want to return to help the investigation. He would want to be the one to give the closing statement, to look sympathetic, to control the media. And, as I knew from our corporate files, there was a $10 million Keyman insurance policy on me, a policy that would be very complicated to claim if I was convicted, but much easier if I were gone. The trap was set. Now, we waited for the predator to come home. The call came 3 days later, not from Julian, but from the D.C. prosecutor. "We've got movement," she said. "Agent Maya Reed just pushed the local AUSA to schedule an emergency bail hearing for you. She's fast-tracking your indictment. She's confident. She thinks she has you." Of course she did. She'd heard the case was weak. She was moving to secure her win before it fell apart. And 2 hours after that, another call. "He's on a flight," the prosecutor said, her voice tight with anticipation. "Julian Vance is on a private jet from the Caymans, landing in New York tonight. He's coming back." My phone rang at 7 p.m. the night before the hearing. I was in the Marriott, watching the local news, a silent broadcast of my own face being displayed on the screen. The call was from an unknown number with a New York area code. The FBI agent in the chair across the room, the young one, nodded at me. The recording equipment was live. I picked up. "Hello?" A pause. And then his voice. The voice I had slept next to for 15 years. It was thick with a practiced, syrupy sadness. "Alara." I said nothing. "Alara, honey, is that you?" His voice was a performance, full of pain, designed to disarm. I heard things were difficult. I heard what was happening. Silence. I focused on a loose thread on the hotel chair. I let the silence stretch, let it become a weapon. In the quiet, I could hear his breathing. "Alara, please say something. I'm on my way to Chicago. I'm in New York now. I'm coming. I'll be there tomorrow for the hearing." The arrogance of it, to come to my execution. He continued, his voice cracking on cue. "I just want you to know, whatever this is, whatever you did, I forgive you." It was a masterstroke, a beautiful, vicious, calculated move. He wasn't just playing the heartbroken husband, he was playing the magnanimous saint. He was fishing. He was desperate for a reaction, an admission, a scream, a sob, anything he could use, anything that would confirm I was the guilty one, so he could report back to his lawyer. "She's hysterical. She's confessing." I let the silence hang for another 10 seconds. I counted them in my head. 1,000. 1,000. "You have nothing to say." His voice changed. The sympathy was gone. Underneath was the cold, sharp edge of irritation. The mask had slipped. He wasn't in control of the conversation, and it was infuriating him. "After everything, you won't even speak to me." I took a slow, quiet breath. I thought of the empty closet, the man crying to Robert Peterson, the audio file where he called me his bookworm idiot. "I think," I said, and my voice was not the one from the golf club. It was not the voice of a broken woman. It was a new voice, one I had never used before. It was flat, cold, and dead. "You left your tie clip." The line went completely, utterly silent. I had broken the script. He was expecting tears, rage, begging. He was not expecting a calm, factual inventory of his betrayal. He was not expecting me. For a second, I thought he had hung up. Then, a sound came through the receiver. It was a low chuckle. It grew, and in a second, he was laughing. A full, deep, arrogant laugh. The laugh from the audio file. The laugh of a man who believed, in his very soul, that he had won. "You always were a cold one, Ilara," he said, the performance over. This was him. "I'll see you in court. Wear your best suit. You'll want to look good for the pictures." He hung up. The agent across the room let out a breath she looked like she'd been holding. "We got it. Location confirmed. And, my God." I put the phone down. I was not shaking. I was perfectly still. He thought he was coming to watch me burn. He didn't know that phone call was the last piece of evidence the DOJ needed to charge him with psychological coercion. He didn't know he had just confirmed, on a recorded line, that he was the predator and I was the prey. He had just bought his own ticket to the show. I woke up before the alarm. The light in the Marriott room was a pale, anonymous gray, the same color as the walls, the carpet, and the sky over the highway. This was not my home. My home, the penthouse, was a stage set that had already been struck. This was a holding cell. I stood in the shower for a long time, letting the hot water sting my skin. But I felt no warmth. I was preparing for a performance. I had sent the young FBI agent out the night before with my credit card, not the corporate card that had been canceled, but my private one, the one Julian didn't know existed. I had asked her to buy one thing. I did not choose a power suit. I did not choose a sharp black dress. I pulled the simple, almost plain sheath dress from the bag. It was a pale, mousy gray, the color of ashes. It had a modest neckline and long sleeves. It was the dress of a woman who was invisible, a woman who had been defeated. It was a costume. I pulled my hair back, not in a severe knot of power like Maya Reed, but into a loose, tired bun. I put on no makeup. I was not Ilara Vance, CFO. I was Ilara Vance, target. There was a sharp knock on the door. Not the agent. It was Marcus Cole. He came in, already in his perfect dark gray, three-piece suit, carrying a briefcase in one hand and 2 coffees in the other. He handed one to me. "It's 8 he said. No preamble. The pieces are on the board." He looked at my dress, and a flicker of something approval maybe passed through his eyes. "Good," he said. He went to the window, looking down at the traffic. "Let's review the field." "1, he said, holding up a finger. "The board of directors. Robert Peterson is currently in the quantum boardroom with the other directors. They have a press release written, condemning you. Peterson has already been on the phone with 3 major newspapers, giving them an off-the-record preview. They are ready to crucify you to save themselves." I sipped the coffee. It was black and bitter. I felt nothing. "Good. 2, he continued. "Agent Maya Reed. She's been at the courthouse since 7. She's personally supervising the local AUSA, the poor idiot who's about to present the case. She's smiling. She's chatting with other agents. This is her victory lap. She's already picked out her new office." "And Julian?" I asked. My voice was steady. Marcus turned from the window to look at me. "Julian," he said, "is a special kind of artist. He's in the main lobby of the courthouse right now. He's standing by the elevators, surrounded by a ring of reporters from the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times. He looks like hell, He's got dark circles under his eyes makeup, I assume, and he's holding a crumpled tissue. He's playing the shocked, grieving husband to perfection. He's talking about his shock and his unbelievable pain and how he just wants to support the cause of justice, no matter how painful. I looked at myself in the mirror above the cheap hotel desk. I saw the gray dress. I saw the pale face. I saw the empty eyes. This was the moment. The empty house. The finality of it. All the old furniture, the love, the trust, the loyalty, the mentor, the father figure, the husband, it had all been cleared away. The betrayal had been a fire, but the fire was out now. All the structures were gone. The lot was empty. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a perfect, cold, and absolute focus. The kind of focus I used to have when I was balancing a hostile acquisition, knowing that one move, one number out of place, would mean collapse. I was perfectly balanced. Marcus watched me. He was a shark, but he was a smart shark. He could read the water. "Are you sure you want to do it this way?" "Alara," he asked, his voice a fraction softer. "We don't have to. The D.C. attorneys are in the building. I can make a call. We can pull you out, take you to a side room. They can arrest Reed and Vance quietly. You don't have to walk into that room. You don't have to put yourself through this." I picked up my purse, a simple, gray purse, the one the agent had bought. "He called me last night," I said. Marcus's expression sharpened. "He told me to wear my best suit. He said I'd want to look good for the pictures." I turned to my lawyer. I fastened the single, simple button on my left cuff. "He wanted a show," I said. "I'll give him a show." The courtroom was a theater. It was packed. I saw the press crammed into the back rows, their cameras poised, hungry for the shot of the fallen CFO. I saw the members of the board, my old family, huddled together in the third row. I saw Robert Peterson, his face a mask of grim duty, sitting right behind the prosecutor's table. He was ready to watch me go down, ready to release his statement condemning me. In the back, standing by the wall with her arms crossed, was Maya Reed. She looked bored, confident. This was just paperwork for her, the final stamp on her victory. And then, in the front row, I saw him, Julian. He was the star. He was dressed in a dark, somber suit, his face a portrait of profound, tragic grief. He looked up as they led me in, and his eyes met mine. He gave me a look of such pained, disappointed sympathy. It was the performance of his life. I sat at the defendant's table. In my pale gray dress, I looked small, invisible, and terrified. It was exactly the costume I had chosen. The judge called the case. The United States versus Alara Vance. The local prosecutor, a young man who kept glancing back at Maya Reed for approval, stood. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice loud for the reporters, "you are charged with 27 counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy. Do you understand the charges being brought against you?" I opened my mouth, ready to give my rehearsed, whispered yes. Before the word could leave my lips, the heavy courtroom doors at the back slammed open, the sound echoing like a gunshot. A new voice, a woman's voice, cut through the room. It was cold, sharp, and owned the space. "We apologize for the interruption, Your Honor. We will be taking over this case." The entire room turned. It was the D.C. prosecutor from the skiff. She walked in, flanked by 2 men in dark suits, followed by 2 new, imposing FBI agents. The courtroom descended into chaos. The local prosecutor looked confused, turning to Maya. Maya Reed's face, for the first time, lost its calm. She uncrossed her arms. Julian stood up, his face a mask of annoyance. "What?" he barked, his performance of grief instantly forgotten. The D.C. prosecutor ignored him, walking straight to the judge and handing a file to the clerk. "Your Honor," she said, her voice projecting to every corner. By the authority of the Department of Justice Office of the Inspector General, the United States is hereby dismissing all charges against Mrs. Ilara Vance, effective immediately. The room exploded. Reporters were shouting. Peterson was on his feet. "Wait!" Julian yelled, striding forward. "You can't!" The prosecutor turned, looking at Julian for the first time. Her face was ice. "Furthermore, Your Honor," she said, "we are here to unseal a new indictment." She let the silence hang for a beat. She looked past Julian, to the back wall, where Maya Reed was frozen, her face a sick, chalky white. "The United States versus Julian Vance and Special Agent Maya Reed on charges of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, obstruction of justice, and corruption of a public official." It happened in an instant. The two new FBI agents moved. One walked directly to Maya Reed. "Agent Reed," he said, "you are under arrest." She started to sputter. "I am the lead agent here." But he was already taking her arms, turning her to face the wall. The other agent was walking toward the front row, toward Julian. I stood up from the defendant's table. My role as the victim was over. I stepped down from the platform, moving past the bar, into the gallery. Julian was immobilized, his mouth open, watching in pure animal panic as Maya was cuffed. He didn't see me until I was standing directly in front of him. He turned, his eyes wide with a horror that was, for the first time, completely genuine. I said nothing. I reached into my simple gray purse. I took out my phone. I held it up, right between us. I pressed play. The volume was not high, but in the sudden, shocked silence, the sound was crystal clear. It was loud enough for Julian, and it was loud enough for Robert Peterson, who was standing right behind him. Julian's voice, his laughing, arrogant voice from the recording, filled the air. "My brilliant, bookworm idiot of a wife. She's sitting in Chicago right now. Terminated. Broke. About to be indicted. It's poetry." I watched Robert Peterson's face collapse as he heard the voice of the man he had trusted, laughing at him. I watched Julian's face turn from panic to a terrible, final understanding. The FBI agent was on him now, grabbing his arm. I leaned in, close enough to smell the expensive cologne he was wearing. I whispered, so only he could hear me. "You were right. You should start over. You'll have plenty of time to do that." The sound of the handcuffs clicking, locking onto his wrists, was the only sound I wanted to hear. I turned my back on him. I did not look at the cameras, now flashing, finally capturing the real story. I walked down the aisle. I walked past Robert Peterson, who was staring at me, his face a mask of ruin, a man who had bet on the wrong horse and lost his soul. I did not look at him. I did not look at anyone. I pushed open the heavy courtroom doors and stepped out into the hallway, leaving the wreckage for others to clean up. My name was clear. The destruction was complete. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you are listening from, so comment below and let's share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.